no doubt that One Piece had some incredible arcs throughout the years, and with those arcs, epic moments came along with them. But having said that, which character was the most valuable player of each arc? Well, today, we'll explain the MVP of each One Piece arc. Before we begin, just to make this a bit more fair, two small clarifications. The first is that for each arc, we will be giving two MVP awards, one for the Straw Hats and one for non-Straw Hats, since many characters offered major assistance to the crew throughout their fights. The second clarification is that we will be holding Luffy in a stricter standard compared to the other Straw Hats, meaning that even though Luffy might have taken down the main villain in an arc, the MVP award might be given to someone else for a performance that highly exceeded expectations, and at the same time, helped the crew achieve their goals. I mean, after all, Luffy is the main character, so without this rule, the list would just be Luffy being the MVP of each arc. Instead, we'll be giving the MVP award to Luffy only when he himself did something extraordinary during the arc, or when there's no better alternative within the Straw Hats. Okay, so from where should we start? Well, obviously, the very beginning, and the first arc of the show, Romance Dawn. Here is where it all begins. We're introduced to a silly and goofy character having barely not drowned in the sea. Kobe found a barrel and brought it inside his ship, without him actually knowing that there was someone inside that barrel that he just picked up. Luffy then proceeds to destroy the Alvida pirates and take Kobe as his first ever member of the crew, at least technically. After all, Kobe was the temporary navigator. If we had to name the MVPs here, then from the Straw Hats, this would either be Luffy, that's the protagonist, or Kobe, that saved Luffy from drowning. Since without Kobe, we would quite literally have never gotten One Piece in the first place, as Luffy would have eventually sunk to the bottom of the ocean. This award is his for this arc. When it comes to the non-Straw Hat MVP, then we've only got one option here. The barrel Luffy was inside. I mean, damn, if someone deserves praise, then it's definitely this barrel that kept Luffy alive this long. Okay, here we should point out that during this arc, we were also shown some flashbacks, which technically fall within the Romance Dawn arc. The first flashback was Roger's execution, which is what started the Great Pirate Era. The second flashback was Luffy eating the Gomu no Mi, Shanks saving Luffy from the Sea King, and in the process losing his arm, and finally, the iconic moment with Shanks giving Luffy the Straw Hat. Which of the two characters should we choose? Shanks or Roger? Naturally, since Roger's execution was the most pivotal moment in the entire story, then obviously the award goes to... not Roger. Why? Well, because the true MVP was this guy right here, Ask D Question. Without him, the One Piece story would have never even begun. This guy's not just the MVP of the Romance Dawn arc, but quite literally the MVP of the entire One Piece story. This was just the first arc, and we still have 29 arcs left to analyze. And as we all know in One Piece, each arc gets crazier and crazier. And by the end of the video, we'll count which character was awarded the most MVP awards among the Straw Hats. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's keep going. The next arc in line is Orangetown arc. The arc begins with Luffy and Zoro out at sea, lost and starving due to the fact that neither of them have any sense of direction. Luffy spots a bird in the air and uses his devil fruit powers to try and catch it so they can eat. However, the bird turns out to be much larger than expected and flies off with Luffy in its mouth. Zoro rows after him, and after a series of events as Luffy and Zoro aimlessly sail across the sea, they end up at Orangetown, an island under siege by the clown pirate Buggy and his crew. There, Luffy meets a pirate targeting burglar, Nami, who he wishes to recruit into his crew as his navigator. The Straw Hats then proceed to fight against the Buggy Pirates. So, what is our choice for MVP here? Among the Straw Hats, we only have two options, Zoro and Luffy. Kobe didn't really do anything important in this arc, while Nami literally betrayed the crew at this stage, as again, she did not officially join them yet. If I had to choose between Luffy and Zoro, I'd probably give this to Zoro, since again, we're gonna hold Luffy on stricter standards. For the non-Straw Hats MVP, well, since we didn't really have any other option, let's just give this one to Chow Chow. At this point, we should probably mention something we realized. You see, a few months ago, we made a video analyzing the worst decisions ever taken in One Piece. Well, as it turns out, among those decisions, we forgot to include one of the worst ones. Which one? Hear me out. As we know, Cavendish is a character with dual personality, that as soon as he falls asleep, his second personality emerges. And let me tell you, that second personality is unimaginably more powerful than his base one. So, what's the bad decision here? Well, if someone just gave Cavendish this sleep mask from Manta Sleep, then his job in the Coliseum would be incredibly easier. Now, I tried this sleep mask myself, and quite honestly, sleep has never been the same. I mean, I worked pretty hard on these One Piece videos, and many times, well, some of these theories keep me up all night. That's where Manta Sleep comes in to help me sleep like a baby, and that's exactly what makes them so special. And let me tell you, the improvement in sleep is not the only thing. And that's because if you hop on the mid-year sale event, you can get these sleep masks while enjoying great discount offers too. Check Manta Sleep by clicking the link in the description down below, and use code Akagami to get 10% off your order. So don't wait! great! Improve your sleep today by buying sleep masks from Mantis Sleep. But back to our video. On to one of the most underappreciated arcs, Syrup Village Arc. Luffy, Zoro, and Nami arrive at Syrup Village looking for the ship, where they meet Usopp, the local village liar. After they learn of a secret plot against Usopp's friend Kaya, they decide they have no other choice but to help him defeat Captain Kuro in order to save her. Among the Straw Hats, all three of Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp did play an important role. If I had to choose, I would go for Usopp. That exceeded expectations and took down Django to save Kaya. Oh, and don't even get me started about this cannon shot from Usopp at the end of the arc. Yeah, that was totally insane. When it comes to the non-Straw Hats MVP, this naturally goes to Kaya, that literally gifted the Going Merry to the Straw Hats, so they could officially set sail on a proper ship like real pirates, and not just brats waiting to drown in sea. Okay, so let's start counting the awards of each character to see which one will end up with the most MVP awards by the end of the video. Naturally, the winner will be one of the Straw Hats, as the non-Straw Hats will probably only get 1 or 2 MVP awards each. Because of that, we'll only be counting the Straw Hat MVP awards to decide the winner. Among the currently active Straw Hats, only Zoro and Usopp have earned an MVP award so far, 1 each. And next is the time for Sanji to join the crew, Baratie arc. The Straw Hat pirates meet Johnny and Yosaku, which are old friends of Zoro, and who direct them to the restaurant ship Baratie, a floating oasis in the middle of the ocean. There, they meet Chef Sanji, who Luffy naturally wishes to recruit as his crew's cook. However, Pirate Admiral Don Krieg sets his sights on the Baratie as a replacement for his devastated fleet, and the restaurant soon comes under siege. Luffy battles Don Krieg and eventually defeats him, which is what essentially saves Baratie arc. Zoro's battle with Mihawk was indeed epic, but this did not really contribute to the goal of the crew in the slightest. This was just more of a personal ambition of Zoro's. Plus, don't even get me started with the actual result of this encounter. Mihawk utterly destroyed my boy Zoro here. Because of that, we'll be giving the MVP title to Luffy for this arc. When it comes to the non-Straw Hat MVP, we've got 2 candidates. Sanji, that, remember, has not yet joined the crew, dove into the water to save Luffy from drowning, and Mihawk, that spared the Straw Hats despite having the ability to annihilate them on the spot. Given how epic Mihawk's appearance was, and how easily he could obliterate the Straw Hats if he wanted, I will give this to Mihawk. This brings the MVP toll as following: 1 award for each of Zoro, Usopp, and Luffy, with the rest of the crew still being at 0. Moving on to Arlong Park. The arc starts with Zoro and Usopp tracking Nami, who stole the Going Merry, all the way to Kokoyashi Village, Nami's hometown. There, they discover that it is ruled by Arlong and the Arlong Pirates, a pirate crew of fishmen which Nami is a member despite her will. After Luffy and his new cook Sanji arrive on the island, Nami's past and true motives come to light. The Straw Hats decide to free both her and the village from the Fishman's claws, and thus engage in battle with them. Here, the 2 candidates for MVP among the Straw Hats are Luffy and Sanji. Zoro was heavily injured in this arc, so he couldn't really put his full power on display. Nami had not yet officially joined, and Usopp, well, Usopp's just being Usopp in this arc. Now, between Sanji and Luffy, Sanji's most important contribution was diving into the sea and saving Luffy from drowning once again, while Luffy's contribution was defeating Arlong. If I had to choose, I'd give this to Luffy, for the reason that his whole presence in this arc was the reason I decided that I'm sticking with One Piece all the way to the end. From the epic walk into Arlong Park after giving Nami his Straw Hat, to his speeches while fighting Arlong, all the way to his epic win, Luffy 100% deserves this title for this arc. Now, when it comes to the non-Straw Hat MVP, I guess the only right choice would be Bellemere, that saved both Nami and Nojiko from Arlong, even if that required her own death. This means Luffy ranks his 2nd award and takes the lead ahead of Zoro and Usopp. Moving on to Loguetown. The Straw Hat pirates stop at the city where Goldie Roger was born and executed in order to get supplies before heading to the Grand Line. However, there they come across the powerful Marine Captain Smoker, as well as Buggy. Being a Logia, Luffy is powerless against Smoker, as again, Luffy has no idea about the concept of Haki and how it can help him counter the Logia Devil Fruit users as of yet. When Luffy is detained by Smoker, Dragon appears and frees his son. Although not 100% confirmed, something similar happens when Luffy's about to be executed by Buggy, as lightning strikes the execution platform, and thus Luffy is set free. This occasion is heavily rumored and theorized by fans to be the work of Dragon once again. When it comes to the Straw Hats MVP, this goes to Luffy, and even in the moment he was about to be executed, he behaved in a manner similar to Goldie Roger, showing everyone present there who the next Pirate King will be, this time without having to shout like a maniac like he usually does, but rather showed this with his actions and behavior that mirrored Roger's actions when he was about to be executed. When it comes to non-Straw Hat MVP now, naturally here we have none other than Monkey D. Dragon. With this arc, Luffy earns his 3rd MVP award, while the other 2 Straw Hats remain at 1. On to Reverse Island arc. arc. The Straw Hat Pirates make their way to Reverse Mountain in order to enter the Grand Line. As they descend the mountain, they come face to face with not only the giant whale Laboon, but also the mysterious agents Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday. Here, Luffy helps Laboon by showing him affection of his situation and by painting his Jolly Roger on him. Nami, on the other hand, learns about log pose and how they are needed in order to navigate through the Grand Line. So, let's give the Straw Hat MVP for this arc. The two candidates are Luffy, that helped Laboon, and Nami, that started playing a significant role in navigating the ship effectively, so that thankfully, Zoro stays away from the wheel. I tend to lean more towards Nami here, as let's not forget that Luffy also punched Laboon at the start, thinking that he could defeat him that way, which in the end only ended up making Laboon even angrier. For non-Straw Hats, I will give this MVP award to Crocus, that explained to the Straw Hats how to navigate and even gave them his own log pose as a gift. Without that, the days of the Straw Hats would be numbered. No matter how good of a navigator Nami really is, she would not be able to keep the ship sailing if she did not know in what direction to navigate the ship accurately, meaning that after this arc, Nami joins the MVP awards race as well with her first point. Next up, it's Whiskey Peak. With a log pose now in hand, the Straw Hat Pirates are directed toward Whiskey Peak, a town that welcomes pirates with open arms and treats them like celebrities. However, things are not as they seem. In the end, the Straw Hats ended up being ambushed by the Baroque Works. But what was the result of that? Zoro, while also being drunk by the way, sliced and defeated every single one of the Baroque Works agents standing in his way. As far as the Straw Hats MVP, there's no debate at all here. It's Zoro. For non-Straw Hats, we have Vivi, that revealed her true identity and told the Straw Hats the truth about Alabasta. Zoro now earned his second award and starts closing the difference from Luffy. Let's continue. Moving on to Little Garden. There, they encounter two giants, Dory and Brogy, who have been dueling one another on the island for the past century. After befriending the giants, the crew is ambushed by the Baroque Works. You see, Mr. Five uses his Devil Fruit ability to trap Zoro, Nami, Luffy, Brogy, and Vivi. The one who managed to free them was Usopp with the help of Karoo, all while Sanji tricked Crocodile through a Denden Mushi and thus stopped reinforcements from arriving. The Straw Hat MVP for this arc are both Sanji and Usopp, but if I had to give this to only one, I'd probably give it to Usopp that freed the crew. For non-Straw Hats, the MVP belongs to both Dory and Brogy, that slayed the Island Eater, a giant goldfish who eats ships leaving the island, sacrificing what remained of their weapons in the process, and thus helped the Straw Hats set sail for their next destination. Luffy still remains number one with 3 MVP awards, but both Zoro and Usopp are now close with 2 points each. On to the arc that Luffy finally recruited the position he wanted most. And if you think that position is a doctor, well, no. I'm talking about emergency food. This arc is none other than Drum Island. You see, after Nami falls ill with an unknown disease, the Straw Hat Pirates travel to Drum Island in search of a doctor. There, the crew meets a bizarre talking reindeer named Tony Chopper, who helps them fend off the country's former ruthless king, Wapol. In this arc, we saw Luffy climbing on top of a mountain while his hands were freezing, all to find someone to help Nami. Now, I don't know which of you ever got frostburns, but let me tell you, what Luffy felt while climbing that mountain must have been excruciating pain. Not only that, but Luffy later on took a direct cannon hit, all to protect Chopper's flag, while later on giving an inspirational speech about what the flags truly represent. No debate needed for this arc. The MVP among the Straw Hats is obviously Luffy, but how about non-Straw Hats? Well, here we would probably have to choose between Chopper and Kureha, but since Kureha was the one who saved Nami, we'll just go for her. Luffy earns his 4th award and regains his 2-point lead. Moving on to Alabasta. The Straw Hats finally reach the desert kingdom of Alabasta and begin their race across the land in order to prevent a massive war between the kingdom's royal guards and the rebels. However, as it turns out, the true perpetrator of the war was Mr. Zero, also known as Crocodile, along with the remaining members of Baroque Works. On this arc, we also had the return of Smoker, who chased down Luffy, and here is where Ace arrives and protects his brother. During this arc, we had quite a few remarkable fights, and among the Straw Hats, the candidates for MVP are 2, Luffy, that defeated Crocodile, and Zoro, that defeated Das Bones. Even though Sanji's fight with Bon Clay was also epic, it was centered more towards comedy rather than epicness, unlike Zoro's fight, where Zoro made the first steps into becoming a true swordsman, being able to cut anything standing in his way, including steel. For this arc, even though Zoro would be a great choice as well, I will give the Straw Hat MVP to Luffy, and for non-Straw Hats, I will give this to Ace, that protected his brother from Smoker. I mean, even with holding him at stricter standards, Luffy's still leading the race with 5 points. Up next, we have the Jaya arc. You see, after the Straw Hats Pirates log pose points them towards the sky, they travel to the island of Jaya and work with Mont Blanc Cricket to determine if there is indeed an island in the sky. While in the pirate-populated port town of Mocktown, Luffy ends up in conflict with the overconfident Bellamy that asks Luffy, quote, if he knows how to even throw a punch, all before being put to sleep by a single punch from Luffy, of course. Among the Straw Hats, the MVP here is Luffy, while among the non-Straw Hats, we've just got one candidate, Blackbeard. My My choice is the duo Luffy and Blackbeard, for the sole reason that the parallels drawn between them and the way these two interact throughout the arc was peak writing by Oda. Taking into consideration the dreams never end moment with Luffy and Blackbeard, this duo is the only right choice for this arc. Luffy's on a roll here with his 6th point, leaving everyone else far behind for the time being. On to Skypiea, where the Straw Hats learn of its connections to Jaya and Montblanc Nolan's tale of a lost city of gold. As the crew embarks in search of treasure, they become entangled in a 3-way war between the native Skypieans, the vengeful Shandians, and the land's cruel self-proclaimed god, Enel. The main events here are Luffy achieving Ultra Instinct against Enel, and afterwards taking down Enel with Golden Rifle. But my favorite moment from this arc was Sanji's epic I Needed a Light against Enel. Among the Straw Hats, I would probably go for Sanji for the first MVP spot, simply because we expected Luffy to defeat Enel, but Sanji's sacrifice and sabotage of Enel's ship was literally chilling. Now, among the non-Straw Hats, we have none other than Montblanc Nolan, that was shown throughout various flashbacks. As we saw, now Sanji earns his first MVP award as well. Up next, Long Ring, Long Island. You see, upon arriving on Long Ring, Long Land, the Straw Hat Pirates are ambushed by the Foxy Pirates and challenged to a Davy Beck fight, with the prize being none other than Chopper. Well, among other things, the most epic part was Afro Luffy, of course. When Luffy and Foxy fight in this competition, the battle takes place on Foxy's ship, which is full of traps and weapons to give him the advantage. Before the match, Usopp persuades Luffy that wearing a large Afro wig will increase his strength. Despite his foe using several of the ship's weapons and even robotic battle suits, Luffy manages to defeat Foxy by reflecting his beams back at him using a mirror and punching him into the ocean. In the manga, Foxy's flag is taken. In the anime, however, Nami made a deal with Foxy that the winner would take 5 crew members, but Foxy changes this to 500 crew members, expecting the Straw Hats to pay for this through their children, since they do not have that many members in their crew. Thus, when Luffy wins, he takes Chopper, Robin, 497 members of Foxy's crew, and their flag, leaving only 3 people. But Luffy being Luffy, he later dismisses the crew members he won, and they all run back to Foxy. For the Straw Hat MVP, we've got Luffy, while for the non-Straw Hat MVP, we'll just put Foxy. Once again, Luffy stacks up more points, bringing his total to 7 awards. Having covered Long Ring, Long Island, let's now move on to Water 7 Arc, where we have quite a few candidates for MVPs. If you don't remember the events of Water 7, let's quickly refresh your memory then. The Straw Hats arrive at the oceanic metropolis of Water 7 to find a shipwright who can repair the Going Merry, as well as potentially join their crew. They soon become targets of the Frankie family, the city's underground gang, and become involved in all kinds of messy situations with Cypher Pole agents like Rob Lucci, that at the time was undercover as a spy. Among the Straw Hats, I've got 2 candidates for MVP, the first of which is Zoro. You see, during this arc, Robin is taken captive by Spandam and CP9. Because of that, the Straw Hats head toward Enies Lobby on board of Puffing Tom, but while they travel across the sea train, another train comes towards them in the opposite direction. Zoro, being the badass that he is, proceeds to cut the entire freaking train in half in order for the 2 trains to not crash. Also during this arc, we had Usopp's separation and fight with Luffy. The one who stood his ground and stopped Luffy from simply taking Usopp back was Zoro, which was once again another epic moment. The second candidate for Straw Hat MVP is Sanji, that snuck into the sea train to follow Robin when she was abducted and told everyone what happened. If I had to choose among the 2, I'd probably go for Zoro here, as the train split was mad impressive. For non-Straw Hat MVP, we've got 2 candidates. The first being Tom through his flashbacks, and how he was sentenced to death by the world government for building the Oro Jackson of Goldie Roger. The second candidate is Frankie, that gave us information about one of the ancient weapons, Pluto. I mean, remember, Frankie had not yet officially joined the Straw Hats at this point, so we consider him as a non-Straw Hat. Among the 2, I'd probably have to go for Frankie. We now have Zoro earning his 3rd point, and Frankie joining the race as well, even if his MVP award was earned as a non-Straw Hat for this round. But after Water 7 arc, we have the most epic arc as of yet, Enies Lobby. The Straw Hats, Soga King, and the Frankie family all arrive at Enies Lobby to rescue Nico Robin and Frankie. Standing in their way, however, are the forces of the world government, including its deadly assassination unit, CP9. A massive battle ensues between the 2 sides when Luffy declares war against the world government. Each Straw Hat had an epic fight during this arc, but the most notable ones are the following: Luffy unlocking his 2nd gear against Blueno, as well as his fight versus Rob Lucci being the definition of insane. Not only that, but Luffy's declaration of war was something else, especially when you consider that Luffy acknowledges 100% what it means to burn a flag. After all, as we analyzed a few moments ago, he was willing to take a cannon shot head-on in order to protect Chopper's flag in Drum Island. So yeah, Luffy definitely knew what he was doing here. But Luffy's battle was not the only insane fight of this arc, as one of my favorite moments in all of One Piece was Chopper's decision to eat the 3rd Rumble Ball and become a mindless monster. お前はもう死んでいる。何? Now, during the ending of this arc, we also had the death of Going Merry, which I don't know how to describe this, but only One Piece can make me sad over the death of a literal ship. Among the three, Luffy, Chopper, and Going Merry, I would probably have to go with Luffy for the Straw Hats MVP. When it comes to non-Straw Hats MVP, then the choice is obviously Soga King, that without hesitation shot down the world government flag with pinpoint precision. Now remember, despite common belief, this guy is not Usopp, but even if he is, well, Usopp's not part of the Straw Hats at this time, as he defected from the crew after his fight with Luffy over Going Merry. So again, we can choose him for the non-Straw Hat MVP. Luffy brings his toll to 8, while Usopp equalizes Zoro's awards with 3. Next in line is Brook's arc, aka the Thriller Bark arc. During the Straw Hats' journey through the Florian Triangle, the crew stumbles upon Brook. Naturally, like any wise man would do, upon seeing a literal skeleton speaking, Luffy's first thought was to ask him to join their crew. Long story short, Brook joins the Straw Hats. When the crew arrives at a seemingly haunted island called Thriller Bark, they encounter the warlord Gecko Moria. Using his devil fruit abilities, Moria steals the Straw Hats' shadows, just like he's been doing all along with anyone passing by Thriller Bark. The two most important fights that took place were Nightmare Luffy defeating both Oars and Gecko Moria, as well as Zoro defeating the God of the Blade, Ryuma. Not only that, but probably the most iconic moment of this arc was Zoro's Nothing Happened. If we had to name a Straw Hat MVP for this arc, then that would be Zoro. As far as non-Straw Hats MVP, this goes to Kuma, that went directly against his commands and allowed the Straw Hats to live. Not only that, he also tested the crew in order to get a good idea of whether they are truly ready for the new world. Zoro is now second with 4 points. Next arc in line is Sabaody Archipelago. You see, the Straw Hats arrive at the final island of the Grand Line's first half, Sabaody Archipelago. While searching for a means to pass under the Red Line into the New World, they come into conflict with a deadly human trading ring that sells to the world nobles. There, after a series of events, St. Charlos shoots Hachan and starts celebrating. Naturally, Luffy, that was present there and saw everything taking place, gets as furious as it gets. And what does he do? He punches St. Charlos so hard that he sends him back to the manga. Well, truth be told, the outcome of that was not the best, because as a result of Luffy's actions, a buster call was issued, which brought an entire warship filled with Marines, as well as the Vice Admiral Kizaru. Before the Straw Hats were about to be annihilated, however, Rayleigh stepped up and protected everyone. Kuma finished the job and saved the Straw Hats by sending each of them to a separate location with the help of his devil fruit, the Nikyu no Mi. Well, the only Straw Hat that did something memorable in this arc is Luffy, and that's why we gave him the MVP award for this arc. However, the true MVPs of this arc are, as we analyzed, Rayleigh and Kuma. But which of them will we give the MVP to? Well, I lean more towards Kuma, to be honest, even though Rayleigh would be a pretty valid choice as well. And with this arc, Luffy now gets to 9 points. Moving on to Amazon Lily. After his defeat at the hands of Kuma at the Sabaody Archipelago, Luffy is sent flying and crash lands on Amazon Lily, an island exclusive to women that executes males on sight. As he tries to find a way off the island and back to his crew, Luffy is supposed to be executed, but after a series of events, he not only escapes death, but also causes Boa Hancock to fall in love with him. Well, for this arc, we don't really have any other Straw Hat present, and so as a result, the MVP is Luffy. But for non-Straw Hats, the MVP is naturally Boa Hancock. Luffy is now ranking 10 points, and thus increases his advantage even further. After Amazon Lily, we now get to Impel Down. Here, we see Garp visiting Ace at Impel Down and expressing his disappointment that both Luffy and Ace turned to piracy when he wished for them to be Marines. Ace counters it would not have mattered anyway, since they have the blood of world-class criminals in them. He goes on further explaining that he took his mother's name Portgaz out of love for her, and he does not care the slightest of his father, claiming Whitebeard to be his only true father. Meanwhile, Luffy goes through various obstacles in his effort to penetrate Impel Down and help Ace break out. However, what ended up happening instead is that Luffy got absolutely packed by Magellan, with the result being that Ivankov had to step in and administrate certain hormones to him. In exchange, however, Luffy would lose 10 years from his life. Once again, the only Straw Hat present in this arc is Luffy, so again, having no other choice, this round belongs to Luffy for the place of the Straw Hat MVP. For non-Straw Hats MVPs, though, we got 2 candidates. Bon Clay, that was willing to sacrifice himself in order to help everyone in their effort to free Ace, and the other option, which is Ivankov, that quite literally saved Luffy's life. Between the two, I gotta lean more towards Ivankov for this round. Luffy now stacks 1 more point and goes to 11. Next stop, Marineford. Having failed to reach Ace before he was transferred, Luffy and his companions escaped from Impel Down and traveled to Marineford, the base of Marine headquarters. All around the world, people voiced their opinions on the execution and whether Whitebeard will really show up. A few doubt his strength due to his old age and the number of the Marine forces. Others, who personally met Whitebeard and even retired from piracy just by being around him, think otherwise. Even children know of Whitebeard's raw strength and sing a playground song about him. Meanwhile, the inhabitants of Marineford, a city where the families of Marines reside, have been evacuated due to the oncoming war. The moment of war arrives, and Whitebeard is is here. Throughout the war, contrary to what everyone believed, Luffy showed his true potential by not only competing with none other than Whitebeard, but also unleashing his first ever Conqueror's Haki in order to make the executioners faint the moment they were about to kill Ace. When it comes to Straw Hat MVP, once again, we have no other option than Luffy. For non-Straw Hats, there's 4 candidates this time. The first is Crocodile, that went absolutely beast mode during the war and fought on equal ground against multiple opponents that everyone thought were much stronger than him. The second option is Whitebeard, that showed what an absolute beast he could be when he goes all out, even while being old and sick. The third option is Shanks, that arrived in Marineford and his mere presence there was enough to end the war. Not only that, he also stopped Kaido from attending. And let me tell you, if Kaido actually came to Marineford, then things would have turned out much worse than they had in the original story. And finally, the fourth candidate is Trafalgar Law, that not only helped Luffy escape, but also offered him medical support in order for him to survive. Having said all of that, our option is Whitebeard for the MVP award of non-Straw Hats in Marineford. After Marineford, Luffy ranked yet another point and moved to 12th. The next arc in line is the mini-arc of post-war, where Luffy is essentially dealing with post-traumatic stress due to the death of Ace right in front of his eyes. The one who managed to help him was Jinbei, and because of that, Jinbei earns the MVP for non-Straw Hats. Since we, again, don't have any other Straw Hats doing something worth mentioning here, we will not be giving an award to anyone this time, meaning that with this, Jinbei also ranked his first point. On to Fishman Island arc. There, the crew learns the history of Fisher Tiger and the ongoing discrimination between humans and fishmen, while the new Fishman pirates plot to overtake Ryugu Kingdom and make fishmen be recognized as a supreme race. In doing so, they naturally intend to harm a lot of people, both humans and fishmen alike. Obviously, Luffy objects to that. During this arc, Luffy unleashes a powerful Conqueror's Haki that knocks out over 10,000 fishmen in one go. Not only that, but he also takes down Hody Jones with his new move, Red Hawk, that is obviously a memento to Ace. When it comes to Straw Hats, even though we hold Luffy in stricter standards, we really can't choose someone else for this arc, and thus Luffy earns the MVP award once more. When it comes to non-Straw Hats, the winner is none other than Jinbei, that saved Luffy's life by donating his blood. Luffy ranks another point and goes to 13, while Jinbei also gets his second point of today's video. Moving on to the next arc, Punk Hazard. You see, upon finally entering the new world, the Straw Hat Pirates immediately receive a distress call from residents of Punk Hazard, who state that a samurai is attacking them. Without hesitation, Luffy sets off to the blazing island, with Vice Admiral Smoker hot on his tail. On the supposedly death-ridden and empty island, the Straw Hats soon must contend with both the G5 Marines, led by Vice Admiral Smoker, and the mad scientist Caesar Clown, whose deadly experiments must be stopped. In the island, the Straw Hats find out about Caesar Clown's evil plans, as well as the connection with Doflamingo and Kaido. After a series of events, Zoro shows what an absolute badass he is and cuts Monet in half during their fight. Not only that, but Law, that is also present on the island, engages in battle with Virgo. That also serves as a revenge for what happened with Corazon. Well, all I'm going to say is that Law's attack was something else, as it not only split Virgo in half, it also quite literally split the entire Punk Hazard in half. The MVPs are Zoro for the Straw Hats and Law for the non-Straw Hats. With this award, Zoro now reaches his 5th point. Moving on, we have one of the best arcs in One Piece, Dressrosa. Here, the Straw Hats, along with Trafalgar Law, together with Kinemon, Momonosuke, and the captured Caesar Clown, travel there with the goal of taking down the nation's king, Warlord of the Sea, Don Quixote Doflamingo. A number of great fights took place, including Frankie versus Senor Pink, Zoro versus Pika, Zoro versus Fujitora and the meteor he summoned, and Luffy versus Doflamingo. All of them were crucial, but truth be told, we expected all those characters to be this epic. What we did not expect, on the other hand, was Usopp's actions. You see, Sugar's Devil Fruit was so broken that she was able to turn every single opponent she was faced with into a toy. The one who took her down? Usopp, or what he later became known as God Usopp. Because of that, we will be giving the MVP award to Usopp for this arc. Among the non-Straw Hats, I've got 2 candidates. Sabo, that regained his memory and came to Dressrosa in order to reclaim the Mira Mira no Mi, and in the process also wiped the floor with Burgess. And the second option would be Law. I mean, Law flipping off Doflamingo, as well as Law's overall contribution to the arc, was crucial. Among the two, I'd probably give this MVP to Law. Usopp now reaches his 4th point for today's video. Up next, Zoark. You see, after defeating Doflamingo, the Straw Hats, Trafalgar Law, Kinemon, and Kanjuro arrive on Zo in order to reunite with Sanji and the others. However, they discover that Sanji has been swept up in a set of personal and political entanglements, and that Zo has been subjected to a siege by Jack of the Beast Pirates. What are these political entanglements? His arranged marriage to Pudding. Now, in this arc, we did not really have any major fights, so we won't be giving any MVP awards for the Straw Hats, but we will be giving an award for the non-Straw Hats. And who deserves this? None other than Zunisha, that carried this entire arc. And yeah, I mean literally, Zunisha carried everyone on its back during the entirety of this arc. Moving on to Whole Cake Island arc. Luffy, Nami, Chopper, Brook, and the Minks, Pikums, Pedro, and Carrot parent, head to Whole Cake Island, where Big Mom of the Four Emperors resides. Nicknamed the Sanji Retrieval Team, the group seeks to rescue their crewmate Sanji from his arranged marriage with Charlotte Pudding, set up to finalize a political alliance between the Charlotte family and the Vinsmoke family. However, during their operation, they become involved in a plot to assassinate Big Mom herself. The events taking place during this arc were insane. Luffy defeated Cracker, Sanji fought Luffy fought Katakuri and awakened 4th Gear Snake Man, but my favorite, Brook standing in front of Big Mom without an ounce of fear and asking for her panties. Not only that, but he fought with her and even later on managed to copy the road poneglyph that the Big Mom pirates had in their possession. Not to mention breaking the picture of Mother Carmel in order to drive Big Mom crazy. When it comes to the Straw Hats MVP, there's only one right answer, and this is Brook. For non-Straw Hats MVP, this belongs to Jinbei, that stood his ground against Big Mom and showed no fear when she unleashed her stay or life attack on him. But Jinbei, as a proper badass that he is, he returned his sake cup and officially left the Big Mom pirates in order to join the Straw Hats. Brook got his first MVP, while Jinbei got his third one. The next important arc we have in line is Levely. You see, during this mini arc, we see that the Straw Hats' actions against the Big Mom pirates are revealed to the world. Luffy's group is on its way to Wano Country, while the Revolutionary Army prepares for their next move. Meanwhile, royalty across the globe gathers for the Levely, without knowing that a shadow-like figure is pulling the strings of the world. This is, as we know, Imu. During Levely, St. Charlos tries to forcefully claim Shirahoshi as his property, but he's punched by Mjosgard, a fellow celestial dragon that recognizes the difference between good and evil. As far as Straw Hat MVP, we will not be giving one out, since we didn't really see much of the Straw Hats during this arc. But for the non-Straw Hats, we'll be giving this award to Mjosgard. And now, we reach Wano. The Ninja Pirate Mink Samurai Alliance gather their forces in Wano Country and prepare for their inevitable clash against the Beast Pirates. The history of Kozuki Oden and his ties to Wano Country, Whitebeard, and Goldie Roger are revealed, and the Alliance assaults Onigashima to take down the allied forces of Kaido and Big Mom once and for all. During this arc, we've got many characters that could earn the MVP. First of all, Zoro injured Kaido. He stood his ground and blocked the attack of 2 Yonkos, and even later on defeated King. Sanji saved Zoro from his injuries and defeated Queen, and he started awakening some sort of Germa 66 inner powers. And meanwhile, Nico Robin destroyed Black Maria. These were just some of the epic fights the Straw Hats had, but naturally, the MVP needs to go to Luffy, that showcased his most impressive power-up to date, 5th Gear and Devil Fruit Awakening, with which Luffy basically becomes the embodiment of a literal god. For non-Straw Hats, we have 3 main candidates. Otama, that with her Devil Fruit ability, she managed to turn the outcome of the entire war by controlling the gifters. Yamato, that fought and held off Kaido, and Momonosuke, that sacrificed part of his life in order to become an adult and be able to fight Kaido on equal ground. Among the 3, I'd probably go for Momonosuke. With this round, Luffy now reaches his 14th point. And finally, the last arc that's still in production at the time of recording of this video, Egghead Island arc. The aftermaths of both the Levely and the raid on Onigashima, as well as the erasure of the Lulusia Kingdom, cause major shifts across the world that could lead to global war. The Straw Hat Pirates, following their log pose, arrive at the mysterious, futuristic island Egghead, where the super genius Dr. Vegapunk resides. However, after being tipped off about Vegapunk's research into the Void Century, the world government decides to dispatch a CP0 team to assassinate Vegapunk, even though the arc is still going on. So far, the MVP among the Straw Hats is Luffy, while for the non-Straw Hats, it's either Kuma, that traveled across half the world to reach Saturn and give him a good punch that left every fan reading it beyond satisfied, or the other option, which is Vegapunk. Given the recent information we got from the latest manga chapters, I'm gonna have to go with Vegapunk. Thus, Luffy sits on top with 15 points. Second place is Zoro with 5 points, while third place is Usopp with 4 points. But since we mentioned Vegapunk, click on this video where we explain all 8 forms of Vegapunk, including the 7th satellite yet to be revealed. Go on, check it out!